church built like this for a man named St. Benno and not know something about him. So not too shabby for a first Mass site. Okay, I'm going to read it because I wrote it out, because if I had given this talk 20 times, I wouldn't need to read it, but I do need to read this one. So he was a bishop, and he was the Bishop of Munich. By the way, one of the things I find interesting when I read this to you is we think we have a lot of problems in the church today. This was 1,000 years ago. Wait till you hear about the problems that were going on in the church 1,000 years ago, and they survived, and we're still here. It gives us hope to know that we'll still survive, and 1,000 years from now, people will still be talking about, wow, just think what happened back in 2020, 2021, but the church survived. So I'm going to read this. By the way, the Cardinal of Munich today is Cardinal Reinhard Marx. And if you don't know what that is, who he is the one who is trying to get one of the leaders of the German church in the synodal way of synods to be apart from the universal church. And they want Germany to make up their own decisions as a synod. And they are very pro-women priests, LGBT. They're saying Protestants can come up for Mass. And Reinhard Marx is the Archbishop of this diocese. So here's what I'm going to read to you. St. Benno was born in central Germany around 1010. Benno was the second son of Count Frederick of Württemberg. As a young man, Benno was sent off to his uncle Bernward to be educated. Bernward was the bishop of a nearby city. After completing his education, Benno joined the monastery in Hildesheim. I don't know where that is. In 1066, Benno was named Bishop of Meissen, which is Munich. So when I say Meissen, it's the old name of Munich. So he was named in 1066 the Bishop of Munich. As a leading prelate in Saxony, which is this area of Germany at the time, Benno had to walk a tightrope between helping the people, the Catholic people of Saxony, but not arousing the displeasure of Henry IV, who for the past 10 years had served both the emperor and as emperor and king of Saxony, who doubted the real presence and even burned the Eucharist. He took the keys, you'll learn this in a minute, he took the keys away from the bishop here, and he came in and took over the cathedral at the time, and he burned the Eucharist. Benno favored the Saxon resistance. The people here resisted Henry IV's taxes and forced labor, and he was arrested for sticking up for the people and for his defiance against the king. Upon his release from prison a year later, how many of our bishops have been imprisoned? I mean, this is interesting stuff. Upon his release from prison a year later, Benno supported Pope Gregory VII in the Pope's conflicts with King Henry, who had invested a number of bishops and other church officers in his domain. So in other words, the king was appointing his own bishops, kind of like China's doing now, appointing their own bishops. And it's a big scandal, but here the king was appointing his own bishops in this area. Bishop Benno denounced this practice. And then the Pope Gregory nullified the king's appointments of bishops, thus setting off 8 years of conflict between the two men, the Pope and the king. For his support of Pope Gregory, Benno was deposed as Bishop of Munich in 1085. He's been kicked out now. His bishop's been taken away. After spending several years in exile as a missionary, Benno was reinstated as bishop by Guibert, the anti-pope, having been installed by Henry VIII. So Henry VIII didn't like the real pope, so he installed another pope, which is called the anti-pope. Now you've got two people claiming to be pope. The rightful pope, Urban II, confirmed Benno's tenure in 1097 when he finally regained his authority as the pope. You think we have problems today? Look at, my goodness, this was 1,000 years ago. Benno was very well liked by the Saxons, the people in this area, for his generosity to the poor and his generosity of time that he gave to his people. He died in 1106 and was canonized in 1523. Martin Luther wrote a furious diatribe against Benno's canonization. You can read it. He wrote a whole document against this bishop being canonized. Protestant mobs desecrated Benno's tomb in Munich in 1539. They came and desecrated his tomb. Today, his relics rest in the church, this church in St. Benno right here in this little case. There's the bones of St. Benno. Now, here's what's interesting. His feast day is tomorrow, which means that since we're having Mass at 4 o'clock, this is his feast day. So you're here on the feast day of St. Benno, and I planned that for the last 10 years. He is the patron saint of Munich, but he's also the patron saint of anglers or fishermen. His icon figures include him with a fish with keys in the fish's mouth. The reason for the fish is the legend that upon excommunication by Henry V, when he was deposed from being bishop, the king threw the keys of the cathedral into the Elbe River. Later, a fisherman found the keys in the mouth of a fish and returned them to the bishop. So when you see, hopefully we'll see pictures around here of him. There's one outside. Yeah. You'll see him with a fish, yes. That is because the king threw the fish as he burned the Eucharist, I suppose. He threw the keys, taking away the bishopric from the bishop. But then a fish came out of the water with the keys in his mouth and gave them back to the bishop. So there you know a little bit about St. Benno, and hopefully you have more confidence that even though we're going through periods of time in the church, every century where there's big problems, the church remains. Because it's not about the popes and the bishops. The church is about Jesus Christ, and he's the one building the church, and that's why I'm a Catholic.
Amen.